Hey boys, it's HarmNone. Today we're going to be going over what to buy and what to avoid this week in Grand Theft Auto Online. Before we get into the video, if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing, leave a like if you enjoy or if you learned something, and of course feel free to dislike if you don't. We got a pretty good week on our hands in GTA Online, at least in terms of the discounts, and in terms of money bonuses, we don't have a whole lot of stuff going on, but we're going to go ahead and start off with whatever little money bonuses we do actually have. So of course it is St. Patrick's Day week in GTA Online, and there's a couple of special outfits and t-shirts and hats and things like that that you can get. It's nothing too crazy. I'm not really going to go over it, but just be aware of that. A lot of it will be awarded to you just by logging in, so that's all you really need to know about it. We have triple money and triple RP on select community series jobs that are created by players in the community. For example, we got the blue coil here, and it is on triple money and triple RP for the remainder of this week, and there's a few more sprinkled throughout the community jobs list. Now we also have double money and double RP on arms trafficking missions that are going to be completed and started through the new Mackenzie Field hangar, which is available at Mackenzie Field, obviously. And we also have double money and double RP on junk energy skydives, which do not pay a whole lot of money. So unfortunately, that's it for the money bonuses this week, other than the weekly challenge. And in order to complete the weekly challenge, you will need to complete 5 arms trafficking missions, and you'll get a special t-shirt and $100,000. So really nothing good going on this week in terms of money, but hopefully you guys actually have some money already, because we do have some really good discounts going on for the remainder of this week. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and get started with them, and we're going to go ahead and start off on Elitist Travel. And on Elitist Travel, we're going to find the Alpha Z1 as a discounted vehicle this week. I'm going to go ahead and just say it right off the bat, it's not worth buying. It is really fast, however, it is completely unarmed, and I feel like for either of these prices, it is way too expensive to justify purchasing it, especially when you can get other planes that are much better than the Alpha Z1, that are nearly as fast, that are just as maneuverable, and that probably look better than the Alpha Z1. Now, I do think it's a pretty slick looking plane, but I think for the majority of people, it's just really not going to be worth it. I don't really see a point in buying the Z1, especially when you can get a plane that does basically the same thing but has weapons on it anyways for not that much more money. So I would recommend not purchasing the Alpha Z1 this week. However, moving over to Warstock Cash and Carry, we do have some really good discounts on some helicopters here, namely the Akula and the FH1 Hunter. Now, both of these helis are really good, and honestly, it's kind of a toss-up as to which one is better for me. Now, personally, I do like the Akula, but I also really like the FH1 Hunter. I think there is something that is important to note between the two, and I do think the FH1 Hunter is a lot better than the Akula if you have a second person that you play with often. Now, if you're a solo player, I do think the Akula does tend to offer a little bit more utility, and they're both right around the same price tag as well. Now, something to note about the Akula, we're going to start with it, is of course it is a 4-seater, which is really cool, and it also does have weapons that are customizable and can be added onto it through the hangar workshop. You can put a 4-missile barrage on it, or you can put homing missiles for the pilot. You can also upgrade the co-pilot's gun to be a dual minigun, and it is also equipable with bombs. You can do the engine upgrades and armor, as well as put the handling that you like on it. So for example, you can go stock, you can go sport, you can go race handling, all those things. It's got liveries, and that is about it for the Akula. However, one thing that it also does have, and the best feature of the Akula by far, is that it has stealth mode, similar to the F-160 Raiju, if you guys are familiar with that, or the Annihilator Stealth, for example, as well. So this thing is really useful for getting around the map if you don't want to be seen. It's also one of the faster helicopters in the game. It's not the fastest, but I would say it's probably top 4 now, with the weaponized Kanata and the regular Kanata having come out since this thing was released. This thing is within the top 5, I would say, pretty easily. It's really good. It's very maneuverable. It's a fun heli to fly. It looks absolutely awesome. It's relatively cheap this week, $2 million if you have the trade price. If you don't have the trade price, I'm thinking it's going to be about 2.4, maybe 2.5. Let me know in the comment section down below, but it should be right in that neighborhood. Now, this thing does have a lot of great features, and if you play with multiple people, this thing can be just as good as well, because you can fly 4 people around in it, which is really awesome. I would say this is a helicopter that is more suited to getting around the map and doing some, light sort of mission related stuff. I think this thing's going to be awesome, gang termination and things like that, like agency security contracts and whatnot. The Akula is no doubt an awesome helicopter, and even in PvP, the stealth mode will give you a huge advantage. However, moving on to talk about the FH1 Hunter, it is a little bit cheaper than the Akula if you have the trade price, which is ridiculous. You need to complete 42 air freight steel missions to unlock that trade price, which I think is way too much. But anyways, they have made the hangar a lot better since this initially came out, so it isn't the worst thing ever anymore. But just under 2.5 mil if you don't have the trade price. So this thing is pretty cool. Now, something to note about the FH1 Hunter is that it operates a little bit differently than the Akula. It only has 2 seats, but the gunner seat on the FH1 Hunter is significantly more powerful and much better than the Akula's gunner seat. And the reason for that is because of this cannon right here that you can see underneath the helicopter. It has insane range and it will one-shot players. It is a 30mm explosive auto cannon, and it is crazy. It one-shots vehicles, it one-shots players, as long as obviously there's no significant armor on the players or the vehicles that you're shooting. But it's got crazy good range. Now that's really interesting, but beyond that, the pilot gets access to homing missiles, which is really awesome, and a 7-missile barrage, which can be fired in super rapid succession. Now, it won't deal a whole lot of damage to players on the ground, I find. I think the splash damage with it is kind of wonky and doesn't really work too well, but it is a very nice thing to have. And it's also equipable with bombs, which is the exact same as the Akula as well. Plus you can do the armor, engine, and the handling of the FH1 Hunter too. Now the real thing that I'm talking about with these two helicopters is that they're both insanely good. They both have their great features. Honestly, my recommendation with the two of them is that if you can afford it, buy both. If you had to choose one or the other, it really depends if you're a solo player or if you play it with other people, or you have a best friend that you play with all the time in GTA. I would say buy the FH1 Hunter if you have a friend or friends that you frequently play with in GTA Online, especially if you do PvP. Now don't get me wrong, this thing is great for PvE as well, and it's also great as a solo player. I just think the Akula is a little more suited to solo play than the FH1 Hunter is, largely due to the fact that if you don't have another player, you are missing out on the autocannon, which is one of the best features of the FH1 Hunter. Now, just the truth is, buy both if you can. If you can afford both these helis, you will not regret owning them both. If you play solo, buy the Akula. If you play with friends more often, I would say buy the FH1 Hunter, but both are super, super useful. One more thing to note about the Akula though, is the fact that when you activate the stealth mode, it will drop your wanted level down to only a 2-star. So for example, you could have a 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, and when you activate stealth mode, it will go down to a 2-star, which is really cool. So that is something to note about it. Both helis are awesome. I would definitely recommend just purchasing both. If you can only afford one and you're a solo player, go for the Akula. If you can only afford one and you play with friends, go for the FH1 Hunter. That is my final thoughts on those two. All right, and so we got two more big discounts here on Warstock Cash and Carry. We got the Mammoth Mogul and we have the LF-22 Starling. Now the Mogul, as cool of a plane as it is, it's got this ball turret on the top, looks really sick, it's got the dual props there and everything. The Mogul kind of sucks. I would really not recommend buying it. I don't think it's worth either of these prices. I don't think it's worth more than $1 million, to be honest, just simply due to the fact that it is nowhere near as useful as a lot of the other vehicles in GTA Online that are air vehicles. It's nowhere near as good as the Akula or the FH1 Hunter even for that matter. So I would avoid the Mogul, all things considered. I just don't think it's really worth your money, your time, anything like that to purchase this thing unless you just really like the Mogul. And that kind of goes for anything I talk about in this series, guys. If you really like something, you can obviously totally disagree with me and ignore whatever I say and buy it. I'm just trying to tell you the objective facts that generally the Mogul is really not a good plane. So if you want one, go for it, but I would highly recommend for mostly everybody to not buy a Mogul. Next up, we have the LF-22 Starling, and the Starling is a vehicle that I'm extremely critical of in GTA Online because I hate Starling pilots because they are the most annoying people in the GTA Online community. However, I must say the Starling is an excellent dogfighter, and they're not wrong in saying that. but they just need to maybe pipe down a little bit because other planes are good too in GTA Online. The Starling is really good at dogfighting. It's got a rocket booster that fires at the back of it. It's also super maneuverable. It turns on a dime, and it is upgradable with armor, engine, and race handling and all that sort of stuff. And it's got this little propeller on the front of it too to help you fly, but it's not my personal cup of tea. I think if you want to dogfight in GTA Online, the Starling is a great plane. If you want to do literally anything else in GTA Online, do not buy a Starling. It's just not that good of a plane comparatively to a lot of the other vehicles in GTA Online, a lot of the other planes, a lot of the other helicopters, air vehicles, even ground vehicles. I feel like the Starling is not that useful other than for taking out other aerial targets, but honestly only players too, because the NPCs aren't going to put up any sort of a fight. So you really don't need a Starling unless you plan to dogfight other players, which most of you probably are not going to do, so therefore I would not buy the Starling for most of you. Moving on a little bit further down, we got the weaponized Tampa, which is one of my favorite cars in Grand Theft Auto Online as far as weaponized vehicles go. This thing is absolutely awesome, but it's only awesome if you have your bunker research done, because this thing's stock with this gun that you can see on it, it actually kind of sucks. This gun is only forward facing and you cannot change it at all. You cannot rotate it, you cannot aim up or down or anything, it just shoots straight. However, you can unlock a dual minigun turret for the top of this thing, which is controllable, and you can turn it around and shoot at things. You can also equip a rear mortar on this thing, a proximity mine dropper, and missiles in the front of the grille right here in place of these two lights. This thing, when you have bunker research completed, is absolutely excellent, and you can also use it in a lot of contact missions, heist setups, and things like that, which is really, really sweet, whereas most other weaponized vehicles that are this well armed cannot be used in those missions. The Tampa has no armor though, so that is something to keep in mind. It will not take any sort of explosives at all whatsoever, so it's not that great against players unless you really, really keep your distance and are very, very careful. Against NPCs, it's awesome. Against players, definitely you got to keep your distance. I would say if you can get it for this price right here, it is worth purchasing if you have bunker research completed. However, if you don't have the bunker research and upgrades available for the weaponized Tampa, I don't really think this car is worth purchasing, at least right now. Moving on to some of the regular vehicle discounts this week, we got the overflawed Entity XXR for $1,613,500. I would not buy the XXR. It is a very disappointing car. It first of all has engine resistance, so it is way slower than it should be. And secondly, it's also extremely undersized, meaning that your legs are actually going to stick into the dashboard in this car in first person, and it is going to look ridiculous. I wish that Rockstar did a good job on the XXR. I wish that it was a better car. I think it looks awesome, but it's super duper undersized, and I feel like for this price, the amount of performance you can get now for that amount of money, or for just a little bit more, is way better than the XXR. Now, if you just like this car, that's fine, but just be aware that like your kneecaps are literally going to be like all the way up here in the dashboard. It is ridiculous looking. I really don't like the XXR. I used to be a huge fan of it when it first came out, but then I started to realize these things as time went on, and I just don't think this thing is that good anymore, but do with that information what you will. We have a motorcycle discount on Legendary here. We got the Principe Electro for $525,000. It does have a boost function, which doesn't really work very well and kind of sucks, to be completely honest. I think for this amount of money, this thing is way too expensive, so for the majority of you, I would say to avoid picking up the Principe Electro. I don't think it's worth it. Over on Southern San Andreas Super Autos, we got the Vapid Dominator GTT for $640,500, and if you don't know the trade price, it's going to be around $900,000, which honestly, for either of these price tags, this thing is not a terrible purchase to make. It is one of the faster muscle cars in Grand Theft Auto Online without HSW counted. However, with HSW, this thing is really not that fast in comparison to things like the Declasse Vigoro ZX with HSW applied to it. However, it still handles really awesomely, does have some nice customization options, some good livery options, things like that, and it's a fun car to drive. It sounds very good, and it's based off of a 1969 Mustang, so I do think it is worth picking up. That's for sure. Moving over to the off-road category on Southern San Andreas Super Autos, we got the Maxwell Vagrant here. I think this thing is really overpriced for what you're kind of getting. At the end of the day, this thing's rear wheel drive. It's based off of the Aerial Nomad in real life, which is a very cool car, but this thing is rear wheel drive, and in races people say this thing is like the best off-road car to use. But in reality, I think the $345,000 Camacho puts up enough of a fight and is a much bigger vehicle than the Vagrant, and I think it can really knock this thing around, and it can definitely get you the win in races. I also do think that the Camacho is just generally a much more versatile and better vehicle. The Vagrant's still cool. If you really want one, buy one, but I do not think it is worth either of these price tags. I think it is extremely overpriced even when it's on sale like this. And of course, I saved the best discount for last, which is on the F-160 Raju. This thing is only 20% off, so it's actually kind of technically the worst discount of the week, but it is by far the discount on the best vehicle of the week. Now, if you got the money, I would say you should buy a Raju while it's on sale. This thing is absolutely fantastic. It's got VTOL mode, it's got stealth mode, it's got homing missiles and explosive cannons. It's extremely fast. In fact, it's the fastest plane in Grand Theft Auto Online now. It has the best acceleration out of any plane in GTA Online as well. Overall, this thing is extremely good, and I would highly recommend picking up a Raju. It is 100% worth every single penny, and if you can get it for 20% less pennies, you should definitely buy one. I mean, the Raju is a sick plane. It's absolutely one I recommend. Please buy one for the love of God if you have the money. Within the casino, the podium vehicle for the week is the Western Power Surge, which is a really, really good motorcycle. It's fully electric, but it does have a speed glitch, and it's just insanely quick. You should definitely try to win this thing if you can. And the prize ride within the LS car meet this week is the True Fade Adder, and in order to win it, you're going to have to place top 1 for 3 days in a row, or first for 3 days in a row in LS Car Meet Series races. I'd say the challenge is a little bit hard for what you're kind of getting. The Adder is my favorite car in GTA Online, but I just don't really see how that's a fair challenge for the Adder. I feel like this thing for $1 million should be a little bit easier, but there you have it. I mean, if you got time, I would recommend trying to get it. And within the car meet, we have 3 removed vehicles. We got the Canis Seminole Frontier on the left, we got the Vapid Retinue in the middle, and of course the Overflowed Immorgan on the right. The Immorgan is a pretty fantastic sports car, although with HSW now it's not nearly as good as it once was. It's going for $2,165,000, and for that price I can't really justify it, to be honest. I think it's a little too expensive. In the middle we got the Vapid Retinue, of course, and it is going for $615,000. I feel like for that price this thing is actually a somewhat decent car. It's not the best bang for your buck, but it's not terrible either. I'd say if you really want a retinue, now is a good time to buy one, but you do not have to do it. You could wait for it to go on sale. And of course, we got the Canis Seminole Frontier in here as well. It is going for $678,000, and I don't really think this thing is super worth it for performance-wise. However, if you really like this thing, it is a great car to customize as well. So that may or may not be worth it to you. Do with that information what you will. You may purchase any of these, you may not, who knows. They all are special in their own kind of way, and they all are removed. So those are the important takeaways there. The HSW test vehicle is the Grotti Italia GTO Stinger TT this week, so test it out if you're interested. Alright, and within Simeon's we got a lot of removed vehicles, starting off in the corner with the Vapid Contender. This thing is absolutely awesome. It goes for $250,000. Great off-roader. Technically it's in the SUVs category, which is quite weird. It's based pretty heavily off of the Toyota Tundra in real life, and I would say for the amount of money that it costs, which is $250,000, you cannot really go wrong with this thing. I would recommend picking it up. Not a whole lot in the way of customization though, so you have been warned. Moving on, we got the All-Slot Swinger. This is one of the faster sports classic cars in the game, not including HSW vehicles. With HSW, this thing is going to get smoked for $934,000. It's kind of a little steep in my opinion for what you're getting as far as performance goes, but it is a pretty cool looking car, and it does have some nice customization options, so that may be worth it to you. Moving on, we got the JB700 regular, not the weaponized variant, not the actual weaponized variant. So $350,000 for this thing. Just so you guys are aware, these guns do not work on this vehicle. They do not work. For $350K, I would save the money and I would save up and get the real JB700 weaponized with the actual working weapons. I think it is much more worth the money. Unless you don't really care about the guns, but I still think it's worth it. Next up, we got the Cockette Blackfin. The Cockette Blackfin is an awesome car. It sounds amazing. Little bit of customization, not too much. For $695,000, I feel like it's a pretty reasonable price given what you're actually getting with the Blackfin. I do feel like it's a good package overall. I would say you could purchase the Blackfin and you probably wouldn't feel too bad about it. It's an awesome vehicle. I'd recommend it. And of course, we got the Proton Tyrus as well here. This thing's going for full price. It is $2,550,000, and for that price I just simply cannot justify purchasing it. I think it is way too much money, so I would avoid purchasing this one. Within luxury autos, we got some regular traffic here. We got the Canis Castigator, which is a great SUV, I will just say that for sure, but it's also available on the website, so nothing too crazy here or special about it really. We also have the Vapid Firebolt ASP as well, which is also available on the website, so again, nothing too special. Although this one is HSW capable, so you should maybe consider doing that to the Firebolt if you guys are interested in it even remotely. But of course, you can just purchase it on the website, so don't feel pressured to buy it through luxury autos. Within the chop shop, these are the vehicles that can be stolen this week, and as you can see, there is the special icon on the Visser Neo, meaning that it actually can be claimed and you can make it into your personal vehicle, which is really cool. Now, in order to get the Visser Neo, you're going to need to complete the podium robbery, and it does have a special Liberty City vanity plate on it as well, which is pretty cool. We also have the Tuner Panther available this week, and it is going to be got by completing the Duggan robbery, and we also have the Karen Everon, which is going to be attained by completing the McToney robbery. The priority file within the Garment Factory this week is the Brute Force file, so if you guys want to make double money on one of these contracts, the Brute Force file is available for you. Next up, we got the Gun Van, and it is located here in the hills. For today, of course, this will be different if you're watching this later in the week, so keep that in mind. However, the discounts and stuff in the gun van will be the same. Now for weapons, we have the heavy rifle. It is discounted by 50% off this week, so if you do want a heavy rifle, you can get it for half off. I don't really think it's worth it, but you can do it. We also have the battle rifle available in here, the compact EMP launcher, the minigun, the carbine rifle, the battle axe, and the L. Strickler rifle. Not really anything too insane in here, to be honest, guys. I don't really think any of it's worth it. And for throwables, we got tear gas, pipe bombs, and proximity mines, and the body armor is available in here as well. And it is 10% off, so I'm going to go ahead and buy some of that. But of course, last but not least, we got to go over your time trials for the week. Your RC Bandito time trial for today is Construction Site 1. Your Junk Energy time trial is Sewer System. Your regular time trial is going to be Pillbox Hill, and your HSW time trial starts down here at the terminal, and it goes all the way up to Chiliad Mountain, which is pretty cool. It's a good one. Anyway, guys, there you have it. That has been it for what to buy and what to avoid this week in Grand Theft Auto Online. Apologies for the longer video, but we just had so many good discounts this week that I had to just talk about. So I do apologize for this one running a little bit long. I didn't really want to make it this long, but there's a lot of information to share. So anyway, guys, leave a like if you enjoyed, dislike if you didn't. Consider subscribing if you guys are new, and I will see you all in the next one. Until then, take care. Peace.